Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com, debatephysics.com also. So, Franklin Who has made another video. Apparently, you didn't see my FU Franklin Who video on the website. I don't know, I guess this is too much for people. Yes, 90% of my videos are on the website because Google's evil. Blah, 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 blah. But anyway. And then, Google owns YouTube. Well, I guess Google isn't Google. Google is something called Alphabet or something. You know, some chicanery to hide their money. Anyway, all the bullshit on this planet. Anyway, so I'm just going to play this video through just because people have to be able to interact and to see if it's possible to do that, and try to explain why certain things are non-starter. It's a word, non-starter. That we can't even get on the same starting line. This horse race can never happen because the horses will never settle at the starting line, and so you can't really compare X, W, Y, Z, whatever, because there's no standard that you're building on. So, and that's a real problem, the lack of foundation. So, I mean, clearly I'm arguing from a point of view that says it's a simple universe, that the fundamental universe doesn't have ghosts, doesn't have ESP, it doesn't have any special powers. It, in fact, has less powers than our world. So it's made out of fewer elements, fewer moving parts, all of that kind of stuff. No compounds, essentially, right? The elemental universe is made of the elements. And, but anyway, yeah, so let's just play it. It's going to be a long video, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if it really matters. I'll leave this one on YouTube as a courtesy to Franklin, because apparently people need YouTube. They can't watch a video if it's someplace else. Woo. Anyway, alright, so this is an extension of a previous video I had made to him about the problems I see with ether theories in general, and I could probably find more of them with any specific ether theory. So the more I know about your specific ether theory, the more I'm probably going to say, I don't think that could possibly work. Maybe that's the same as saying magic, but, it's what it is.
This is a continuation of a debate I've been having with Draft Physics.
Yes, that's what's been taking place. Maybe I'll speed it up a little. Can't hide a little bit of speeding up.
About the nature of light and space. So this is part.
So yeah, it's more just about the nature of everything, how things are, how whatever we call motion in the universe is transmitted, I suppose you could argue. I mean, whether it's a vibration or a wave in some sort of substance, or whether the motion is real stuff moving from point A to point B. That's part of this, I think, the argument. I would argue that Franklin's composition of the universe has both elements in it, which again doesn't make much sense to me. You either have a wave universe or you have a universe made of stuff that's just once in a while looks like a wave but isn't really waving.
And in this we'll be discussing some of the questions that Gary has asked about how an ether is supposed to work. And I would like to congratulate Gary for keeping this discussion very scientific, and so he asked a number of valid questions.
Yeah, thank you. Right, I'd like to congratulate you on the same thing, but technically you did a whole video on why you can discount everything I say by saying the word magic in a way that I think is totally useless and pointless. It might as well just be saying bullshit. I don't know how useful that is.
And I'm here to give him some answers. So this is our topic. How does, say, my ether work? I don't know about other people's ether, but so Gary first asked, what is the format of the ether? And yes, you should be able to draw a picture Okay, now the picture that Gary has got here, is one.
Yeah, I can see mine. I won't be able to see yours. So as I pointed out in the video, I guess you didn't see. There's no point in this format you've figured out for the video. I mean, I don't need to see the whole web page. I don't need all the extra stuff you have in the video. Well, I guess this one is a little neater. He doesn't have the whole web page. No, he does. He has the whole web page in the video, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to tell which is the video and which is my video. My video is the way you're supposed to have a video. Your video is a bunch of extra crap that just makes the image that you're trying to show even smaller for no good reason. So you probably ought to change that format a little.
I don't know, possibility that, if that's like a Lego brick world, and there's a specific, like, grid. Now,
I'm saying that you can't avoid the specific grid. It's an impossibility. You can't avoid it if you create... I would argue that even conventional physics is sort of acknowledging, if you look at what they're saying about even the periodic table now, they have a lot of geometry in how they designate the difference between different atoms, and it's all getting very, hexagonal, octagonal kind of stuff, that there is a certain geometric rules to the stacking of the forces, and you can't evade it. It's unless you go to a system that has a bunch of space in it again. But even to keep atoms together, they're figuring out it's geometry that keeps them together.
I actually don't think it works that way. There are some instances where it's helpful to think of it that way, but the actual format of my ether is like the molecules in air. Okay, so that's my molecule.
Well, but the molecules in air are separate molecules. They're not next to each other. They're not any of that. And the hotter they are, the more chaos they're in. Right? So it's just about the fact that you have created pressure between them by creating a bunch of stuff, energy, heat, whatever you want to blame heat on. I would blame the heat on the fact that you have extra energy. All right, and the extra energy is creating more pushes, and the more pushes mean things can't stick to each other anymore, and so they're pushed apart. So you have separate objects that can't really have to communicate by basically pushing on each other with whatever energy or heat is in the environment, blah, blah, blah. And but you're still going to be stuck with geometry in the end, but now you have geometry that really isn't dominoes. You're really not talking about one thing hitting another thing anymore, because the things are going to end up being further apart, a lot further apart.
Of the ether, my ether is made out of positron electron dipoles. So that's
right. So it'd be comparable to a neutron. Okay. That's what a neutron is, a positive and a negative charge. Now let's just understand what a positron is. So he's going to argue for the existence of this thing. I would argue that it's not possible, that it doesn't make any sense. So a positron has the same charge as a proton, and it weighs 1,000 times less. And the argument is somehow this isn't going to make a catastrophic mess out of any atomic dynamic. I mean, I would argue that as soon as you start creating these things in atoms, and you would create them, that's going to create all kinds of chaos, that we would have, in fact, alchemy now if there was such a particle, because its ionizing potential would be, off the scale. I mean, it would instantly screw up any the dynamic of any atom would be catastrophically affected by injecting into the outside of the atom a charge as strong as the proton.
That's the fundamental particle, and it is composed of particles which we do recognize as existing, except I know.
So again, we do recognize, so please just say the words. I mean, don't pretend that we do. Okay, you either identify something as being conventional physics says, okay, but this we word is just useless. Why bother saying it unless it's something that, yes, everybody really does agree. I mean, there's very few things we can we about anymore, right? Because there's people who just speculate the whole universe is a simulation and all this other crap. So there's not too much we anymore. You're not even going to get that as a concession, I'm just saying.
Oh, Gary doesn't want to recognize the existence of a...
It's not that I don't want to. It's just, fuck you. I mean, again, you demand evidence for what you demand evidence for, and everything that you don't demand evidence for, everybody's an idiot for not believing in. So, I mean, again, this rhetoric isn't very helpful. I don't have any protest against, okay, if you can come up with some reasonable evidence. I'm just saying it's kind of a bold statement. You're saying you have a particle that has the charge of a proton but not the mass of a proton. And you're saying that somehow isn't significant. I'm saying that all of the dynamics of atoms falls apart if you don't have protons stuck in the nucleus of atoms. If you have free protons flying around, you have a real problem, frankly, with making the physics work.
Positron, but I think the rest of the mainstream world is...
Whatever the mainstream world is. So again, now you're saying that, oh yeah, all the dissidents believe in them too. Yeah, all the wave nuts do. All the free energy nuts do. I mean, sorry. I mean, what's your standard for proof? I mean, the only thing I've seen as a proof is an image from like 1950 of a cloud chamber. And it doesn't say much except, well, it looks just like a proton except we're calling it a positron. That's what the image shows. There's nothing unique about it.
Lots of adequate evidence to suggest that the positron has the same mass as the electron.
There's no evidence. So you can say you have lots of evidence, but I haven't seen any of this lots of evidence. They name a gun after, say, positron emission, blah, blah, blah. Do they admit, does the gun shoot positrons? No. They're saying it creates them inside your body and then your body absorbs them. So there's absolutely no detection of the actual positron. It's just some speculated catalyst to some Feynman diagram. It's not in the real world. There's no evidence of it in the form of physical evidence that it ever took place, that it ever happened. It's just a story they tell. You want to believe it? That's your business. I don't know exactly. So I'm just saying, why bother with positron? Why not just tell me it's protons? All right. I believe in electrons and protons. I believe in charge. So if you can stick to making your structures out of charged objects, I'm fine. You want to call one of them a positron and say it weighs less? Well, that's probably okay. I think it has a consequence, but go ahead and say it. It's okay with me.
And has the opposite charge versus a proton, which is like nearly 2,000 times more massive as an electron, so that couldn't possibly be the same thing. So,
well, and there's good reason why that means something. It means something like, yeah, it can't move around as freely, because of the huge difference in the mass. But do we really know the mass of any of these objects? I mean, the masses is all detected by using the kinetic energy formula and deducing the mass from, what they have created as a speed dynamic in terms of saying how much velocity squared. So they have to make the mass pretty large.
We have positrons. And
well, writing down words doesn't mean much to me. So, again, you're saying, I want you to draw a picture. See the picture? I want you to make a picture.
And electrons. Okay? Now, the thing is...
No, it's really not okay. You write shit on the board, I can't. And there's no possibility of me seeing it, so you really have to fix that.
Is that these are normally considered to annihilate each other, and these things can't exist. So what this really is...
Right, now, even that, isn't that just baby talk? So, we all should agree that that's, if there's something silly and magical and nonsensical and made up and all that mush, it's this idea of annihilation. Oh yeah? Really? Oh. And then it just poofs back into existence somewhere else in the universe just to make it all conservative. So we'll just pretend it annihilates over here and it poofs into existence over there, la 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 la. It's just a story. There's no good reason to believe any of that crap.
For those people who want to relate this to something that we know exists, these are what we currently know as neutrons, okay? So these particles, but they are still a positron-electron combination.
Right, so it's not technically a neutron, so it's not technically going to be, again, you have to logically say, well, there's a reason why protons are in the nucleuses of atoms and electrons are on the outside. So you have to make some sort of concession that besides having charge, they have something else that's different about them. Okay, so besides being oppositely charged, there's something about neutrons that means maybe they just aren't very mobile. So maybe they actually do weigh twice as much or 2,000 times as much.
And if you want to read why they don't annihilate, you can read my other papers on what E equals mc squared actually means.
Yes, well, I don't remember that, but who cares? I mean, again, why should I even accept E equals m? The c squared is kind of superfluous. When I could argue that no, I mean, it's just a calculation that basically says there's an amount of energy in every circle of space in the universe. If you just average it out over the whole universe, there's a certain amount of energy per space. And matter occupies space, so yes, obviously matter consumes space, which means it represents an amount of energy. If I have a pile of little BBs in a box and I stick a piece of matter in that the BBs can't go through, they have to bounce off of, I've essentially reduced the space in the box and I've made the BBs more energetic. It doesn't mean the space, the thing I injected, doesn't have energy. It causes there to be more energy by taking up space.
But I assure you they do not annihilate.
Okay, you assure me. You've assured me they exist, and then you assure me they don't annihilate. And frankly, I don't get to see any chain of reasoning at all. So you're not going to explain to me why I should believe in positrons, how positrons function, where they came from, how they're in the universe sitting somewhere right now. Right now there's a bunch of positrons. Where are they? You're saying, well, they're all in ether neutrons. Okay. That's not just a story you're telling? Okay, but okay, I'll follow. I'm saying go ahead, show me how it works. Because I don't think it'll work. I think whether they're neutrons or not, I mean, the fact is they're going to be gravitational, so you have to explain to me how gravity doesn't affect them.
A tight dipole, which is almost completely neutral, but we know that neutrons do have a dipole moment, which proves...
Okay, so this dipole, we know it has whatever a dipole moment is called. What the hell is that? So you say that doesn't mean anything to me. We know that all of that crap is made out of some assumptions about, well, at any particular time you can view it from any particular perspective and you can call it something different. So if I look at an atom, I can turn it. It will look different as I turn the atom because of that geometry argument. The pointy parts of the hexagon look different than the flat surfaces of the hexagon. All of that kind of stuff. So any diamond or anything, I could look at it from different angles and it will look different. Calling that a dipole moment doesn't mean much to me.
That they do have separate opposite charges involved. They're just very, very small. Okay? So my space, if you go like a gas and you fill space randomly, but very tightly. I mean, it's so tightly that there's really hardly any room for these guys to move around. I mean, they're not like gas molecules where, they can move like great distances without bumping into anything. It's like these guys are back about as close as...
Right. I'm saying there's no way you could draw that diagram without it establishing geometric rules. It can't have equalized pressure. So you'd have to explain how it stays random, because it really can't logically. It can't, if you modeled it, if you made a simulation of it, it's going to tend to be stuck in certain patterns because of the fact that it has to share the pressure. It can't really create places that have higher pressure and places that have substantially lower pressure. it has to do the whole equilibrium thing. And that's going to force it to become geometric. And that's going to force you to have diagonal lines in your checkerboard.
As you can get them, right? It's like a billiard table that's completely filled almost with billiard. That if you just dumped in a truckload of billiard balls into it and filled the thing up. So they're virtual.
Right, and everybody would know that there'd be no way to put the 8-ball in the corner pocket, in such a circumstance, because the direction of the motion would end up getting scattered all over the place. So you'd never be able to draw a straight line to a pocket.
Really touching, right? Okay. But like a gas, they still have some leeway. There's still, depending on the ambient conditions, these guys will get into a equilibrium condition. So it's not quite like the X as shown in Gary. So let's go ahead in the video here and answer some more of the...
I'm just saying it really is, and so you really haven't dealt with the argument, because a random geometry is not going to solve the problem. So if you could theoretically prevent it from forming any kind of equilibrium, and you could keep it somehow with a bunch of uneven motions everywhere, how does that draw a straight line? It makes it even less capable of going a straight line.
Questions he's got?
Well, what kind of matter? I mean, how to even imagine it. I mean, what you're doing to the atom is...
Okay, so he's asking, what exactly is the atom and what happens when it goes through the matter. So he's about to draw, I think, a fairly accurate picture, which is that he draws the atom and then it's, surrounded by all of this other stuff, right? Okay. And so how do you tell the difference between atom and the rest of these guys? Okay. Now the rest...
Right. So you have a bunch of ether, okay, which are these neutron things. All right, and now you're going to have something that's distinctly different, which is the matter stuff. Okay, and the matter stuff is, unlike the analogy of atmosphere, there is a real atmosphere of gases where some of these atoms aren't stuck together. Right, so you have to describe how the ether allows the formation, the existence of the matter, and then you have to explain how the ether permits the matter to be in two forms, which is extremely solid and extremely gaseous.
The rest of these guys, they are neutrons, and they are tightly bound. And what an atom is that we have these things called protons, and those consist of two positrons.
So who says? So there's two positrons inside of a proton. So this makes, on its face, you can't make any sense out of that. That's double the charge. So now you're breaking the fundamental Coulomb charge rules that are really well tested. And you're saying that somehow something with twice as much charge only has one amount of charge. I don't think you can do that. I don't think that's, you're saying it's reasonable for me to believe. Well, I don't think that's a reasonable statement, frankly, without some explanation of how the charge is diluted. Because I don't think you can dilute point charge.
And one electron. So that is the actual composition of the proton. So you'd see that as, a little collection of like 3 things, I guess. Okay, something like that, okay?
No, I can't see that. So it has 2 protons in it, 2 positrons in it, and an electron. But it doesn't have a positive charge. Oh, yeah, it has 1 positive charge left over. Okay, so what he's saying is the single proton, which has the same charge as a positron, is put back to having the charge of a proton again by having 2 positrons in it and an electron. I suppose you can do that. I don't know what the size problem was going to be, but yeah, go ahead.
And that is different from the neutrons, which are a collection of like only two things, okay? So you can...
So obviously the neutron, as the real neutron, would have 5 things in it because it's got to have the composite proton, which is 2 positrons and an electron, plus another electron. So it's got 2 positrons and 2 electrons. So you're saying a real neutron is 2 positrons and 2 electrons. Okay, but whatever. Who cares? I'm just saying, draw me a picture showing me how these things move in the world.
Tell the difference between the proton and the neutrons. And then the electrons, of course, are just one little, the electron is just, it's one thing, right? And so this whole thing together would be, say, a hydrogen atom, okay?
Right, and I would argue that you don't need any of that extra crap. All you need are the 2 charges, plus and minus, and the composite, turning one of the elemental charges into a composite object just makes a mess. So the conventional physics says they're quarks. You're saying they're positrons. I'm saying both are nonsense. They're unnecessary and not useful. They'll never make a good model.
And indeed, all of these atoms are surrounded by all of these, neutron, electron, positron, dipoles on all sides, okay?
Right. Okay. So again, I would argue that besides the problem you're going to have with all kinds of charge differentials and moments, the moments where they're turned in the right direction and magnets attract, dipoles are magnets. Okay. So and magnets do attract. So even when they're neutral, that is, they have a north and a south side, they're still pretty attractive because they just turn and crash into each other. So I don't see where this is going necessarily. And then you still have the gravity problem. So in both respects, I don't think you're going to escape those problems.
So that's how you tell where the atom is compared to the ether. Now,
I don't see how that shows me how I can tell the difference between it doesn't show me any density thing. It doesn't show me anything. It doesn't say anything. So somehow the matter is more compressed. I would assume that's what you're going to argue. But it's just more of the same stuff compressed and covered in electrons that don't have positron partners. So that would be the thing you're saying, is there's a lot more electrons in the universe than there are positrons. And that's why the electrons are stuck on the outside of the atoms or something.
Just ask the question about, what happens when the atom moves. Well, because these guys are so tightly packed together, tighter than what I'm showing here, that in order for this atom to move, it actually has to kick one of these dipoles. Like if it was like here and here, you'd have to kick these dipoles apart, right?
Right, exactly. But you'd have to concede the atom's got to be bigger than the individual whatever positron neutron thingies. So you probably should come up with a better word for what these things are in the ether. So call them ethertrons or something. And so the ethertrons are smaller than the atoms, and the atom has to push the ethertrons out of its way. So obviously it's going to create all kinds of excitement in all kinds of directions. Every time it moves, it's going to create all kinds of energy scattered. So again, I don't think that describes the world we see, which is a bunch of straight lines, in my opinion.
And because there is a slight attraction between the dipoles, because they are opposite charges, if they get close enough, they can see the actual opposite charges. And there is a slight attraction. And so,
well, we know that for magnets it's not a slight attraction, but whatever. So they're close enough, but they're not close enough. So you're saying they're dipoles, but they're dipoles that never get close enough to see each other's charge, blah, 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 blah. Now, I would argue that the only way you can make them invisible or truly neutral is you have to spin them, very fast. So if you spun a neutron very fast, you wouldn't be able to see the difference between the electron and the proton. So if you thought of them as red and blue, it spins into purple, and so there's nothing for the red filter to react to or the blue filter. There's no reaction because they can't see it because it's totally turned into mud by the spin. But then you have to explain all of the momentum problems spin creates.
Gary says that, I think correctly, is that, he observes that, yeah, it takes energy to push the atom. And why is that? Because it takes energy to push this other junk out of the way, right? So
I know, but the problem with that theory is that it takes a lot of energy because you're pushing junk in all kinds of directions that aren't going to have anything to do with the force trying to get to B. You've sent a bunch of energy to D and E and F and G. You're sending energy to all kinds of other places. So there's no explanation how the energy stays in a ray of energy. How does the ray stay in its form?
Of the evidence for an existence of the ether is that, if I get behind like a Volkswagen Beetle and I push it, even if it was on a frictionless surface, it takes a lot of energy to get it moving. And why is that?
Right, and so the argument, the simple argument is it doesn't do that in space. So in space I can I can put something that weighs many tons in front of me, and then I can just simply spit at it, and I can move it. It's just a fact. I'll move it not very fast, but I will move it, okay? Because there's nothing to stop its motion, because it's not stuck to something else that's going to absorb its energy. So as long as there's nothing it's connected to that can absorb any of its energy, it will absorb any energy and spread it over its entire mass and move proportionally based on its momentum. So momentum works in space, and space basically is frictionless. So, and it works just fine.
That because it has to shove aside all this other matter that's in the way. Because if there was no ether, then if I applied a force to my frictionless car, then it should just immediately take off at near infinite speed.
Why? Why would it do that? Why would it go faster than the thing pushing it? I mean, what physics are you applying? I mean, I'm moving something this fast, and I hit something that's much more massive than the thing I just pushed with. Why would I think the thing I just hit is going to go as fast as my hand? I mean, what logic is there to that? I mean, the MV part is whether you believe in MV squared, I mean, the MV part's sort of, you're saying it has nothing to do with M. It's just a V universe. Well, that goes all the way back to Leibniz's childhood delusions, where he believed that a pea could hit a boulder, a 10-ton boulder, a tiny pea could hit it, and they would both fly off at the same velocity, whatever the velocity of the pea was. If that makes sense to you, fine. It makes no sense to me.
Because there shouldn't be anything in the way, right? It's like, there's nothing in the way. I should just be able to tap it, and it should just go zooming off at, 100 miles an hour, because there's nothing to stop it, right? But no.
Right, so I hit one atom into two atoms, and all three atoms fly off at the same speed. And then that collection of atoms hits another 6 atoms, and they all fly off at the same speed. I mean, sorry, that doesn't make any sense to me. I just keep increasing the mass, and I keep going the same velocity? No.
It doesn't do that. It takes energy to get it going, right? So
again, the getting it going thing is just an earthbound problem. That's just about friction. So if you take away the atmosphere and you take away any surface in contact with an object, you can't absorb its motional energy. You can't take it away from it. So whatever, it will transfer 100% of it in 100, it will. No, I don't want to say that, because there's still going to be a problem in getting disproportional mass objects aren't going to do Newton's cradle. They're going to do something different. But the point is you're still conserving the energy, and you don't have to waste any of it digging yourself out of friction. There's no, I mean, to illustrate friction is just to say, look, friction, to start something moving, you have to, basically when something's sitting on a surface, it dimples the surface. And so now you have to go against gravity to get it going. That's sort of the explanation. That you have to break all of the electrostatic and gravitational and any other effects of something being in contact with something. And the longer it's in contact, the more it's sticky it gets. And so that's the energy you have to waste to get it started. But you don't have to waste any of that in space. As long as you're not touching something, there's no resistance to movement. But it doesn't mean you move the same speed as the thing that hits you. You can only move based on how much energy you take from that thing. So you still have to share it. So if I do Newton's cradle in space, it's still going to be Newton's cradle, in the sense that if both objects go off together, they go off at half the speed. If one leaves and one stops, then then 100% transfer. But I can't make both of them leave at the same speed one of them had. That's a violation of conservation of momentum.
That is how matter would travel through this, I would say, like gaseous. So gaseous, but it's so dense, it's maybe closer to a liquid kind of arrangement for an ether. Okay? So let's move on. Okay, so his next point is, so I will concede that, if the ether was restricted to a very, very, Lego brick plate kind of scenario, then it would have to kind of, go that way kind of thing. It's like, okay, I'll concede that. That's why I don't particularly.
It would be even worse than that. Okay, be even your random one, it'd be worse than just a squiggly line, because the squiggly line implies that somehow it knows the energy is supposed to go in this direction. The problem with random is it'll go a little this way, and then it could go 45 degrees that way, and then it can go, so it can end up going way left and way right, and never go anywhere close to the initial direction. So the original direction can get totally wiped out by scatter, and you can end up with energy going perpendicular to the direction of the original source.
Like to use that kind of grid idea. I don't think it's true. What I do think is true is that all these little guys are so packed close together that and they're kind of random, and they are kind of moving around, right, like a gas. They may have some Brownian motion to them. That whenever any force impacts one of these particles, that there is always another particle in position to exactly absorb that energy and then exactly pass it to the next closest ether particle. So you can think of it like a Newton's cradle, right? Where Newton's cradle is just like 5 balls, stuck right next to each other.
Right, and that only works in the direction that you've aligned them ahead of time. So whatever their alignment, if I randomize a Newton's cradle, it's not going to work. I mean, if the balls are in, they're going to go in different directions. So you're saying that somehow you can misalign them and they'll still go in the same direction. So I would even accept that as a possible rule. I mean, you're saying I have a round object here and I have a round object down here, and every time I hit something, it goes the same direction. So it just keeps going this way. So you're creating a bunch of ether that can only, expand based on things hitting. Like if everything was a flat surface, I wouldn't have to hit the flat surface to flat surface. I could just hit this flat surface on the very edge of this one, and this one would still go forward. But I'm still saying you're creating energy because you're hitting more than one thing with the same energy, and that's not going to work. So the velocities would be way off, and sorry, I don't see it. It's not pool table, that's for sure.
And you put the energy in one side, and then boom, it kicks the other ball at the end out, right? Just because it's
same energy in, same energy out. They don't all get to move. You don't hit a bigger mass with a small mass, and everything moves at the same velocity as it leaves, and all those kind of things. So you can't. Your ether is less dense than your atom. Your atom's moving. It's going to hit more than one ether particle. It can't move all the ether particles at the same speed. Sorry, it just doesn't work.
Kind of like a straight line. And the density of this ether is so dense that there's practically always some kind of straight line that's available.
All right, so you can say there is, but there isn't. So take a break. But there's no that the whole argument is there's no such thing as a straight line in such a medium. So you can't say that. You have to make some other argument about how you're maintaining this direction, and you haven't provided a means for maintaining it at all. Pool balls don't do that. They scatter. Why doesn't your ether scatter? Right. So there's a distinction not really being made here. So you're arguing that things can just move. So I could just have an electron in space, and it was the only thing in the space. The assumption is let's say for a one-time event I hit it with something and make it move. That it just moves forever and nothing has to be causing it to move. It just knows it moves. And I'm arguing that even motion has to be explained elementally. Like there's a reason. Like I move my hand. Every electron, every proton, every neutron is moving. Okay? And I'm arguing that I have to explain why they're moving. They're all sitting in space, and I have to say why does just sitting in space, they move to a location and they stop. I mean, all that has to happen for some reason. And I'm saying the reason is because the universe, the empty space, is full of this stuff called energy, the stuff that's really doing all the motion. And all you're doing is collecting those, okay, pushing electrons and protons. So electrons and protons, in my opinion, the matter is all dead. It can't move. And until something's pushing it, it doesn't go anywhere. And it stops as soon as there's nothing pushing it. But that's how it knows the difference between being stationary and moving. It knows the difference because the difference is there's somebody pushing me. You know, and all you can do is have more people pushing you or less pushing in one direction. So I can have a direction going this way because I have two people pushing me that way. I can have one person pushing me this way. Okay, so I am going this way and I'm going that way. Well, I'm still distinctly different motions. This motion and this motion are separate motions. Yes, it comes out to this, but this is made out of this plus this. And it could be even more compound. I could have a third dimension. I could have a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, different pushers in different locations that end up being close to the same angle, but not the same angle. And I'm going in all those directions because I have energy in all those directions. And it just ends up that the matter does the math. It doesn't do it on purpose. But yeah, if it's getting hit this way, somebody's pushing this way, somebody pushes this way, somebody pushes this way, somebody pushes this way, somebody pushes that way, that will all be added up to some motion through space over time. But I didn't really travel that composite direction. I traveled all those individual ones. But I'm saying it's a push universe. And that nothing just moves except the force. The stuff moving the speed of light. That's the stuff that's eternal and just moves from one place to another. The pushers just move. So it's the Descartesian view. The energy just moves from one place to another place. The pusher, the rower, just jumps from boat to boat to boat, depending on how the boat's bang into each other. A bunch of, two boats hit each other. A bunch of rowers from this boat jump into that boat, and the rowers in this boat jump into that boat, and they exchange rowers. And sometimes they do it very efficiently, and sometimes they do it not so efficiently, and one boat only gets 3 rowers, and one boat gets 7 rowers, depending on how the boats hit each other. What boat is taller than the other boat, right? The taller boat, more of them fall in. And the smaller boat, fewer of them jump out. That kind of thing.
The ether, although, I would have to say that's a little bit of a stretch, right?
All right, I'd say it's a big stretch. You still haven't explained to me how you make rays in this ether.
But I think it's not a terribly unrealistic thing that.
Well, I think it's just, again, I'm willing to use my imagination and be fair and say, okay, I'll concede the existence of positrons. I'll let you do this. I'll let you do that. I'll let you all do all this stuff. But you're not willing to concede the same to me. So you won't let me say, no, I can make a simpler diagram of these particles and I don't have to have any of that crap. and I can just have rays travel through empty space. I don't need them to bang into anything. I don't need the medium. All right, I'm saying I can get energy from one island to another island by just shooting the bullet. I don't need the water to make it go somewhere. It's already going. You already have moving pieces of ether banging into each other. You already have motion. Why bother with putting the rest of those things in the way? Why not just throw the domino? I can just throw the domino. I can flick it. I can fly it over to the other island. I don't need a bunch of dominoes in between. Why isn't that reasonable? Why is that magic and your theory's not?
Has to be believed. I mean, there are a couple things you have to believe, and that, for example, that this is a frictionless process, and that exactly that.
Yeah, well, frictionless is easy for me, okay? I'm a big fan of recognizing that our earthbound restraints of moving through liquids, okay, the atmosphere is, you could just call it a liquid to make it simple. Us being stuck in a world where everything is glued to each other, sticky, versus space being non-sticky. Yeah, I can do that. But the fact is contact, and every time two things hit each other, that is, their force hits in the other guy's force, they're going to change their direction. So, I mean, all of this has to be understood that, like, if we're going to use a pool ball analogy, right, we're stuck with a one-dimensional, almost, table. And we have to recognize that if we're going to make this atomic or nuclear, that the pool balls have to be surrounded by some sort of foam, and that the foam, is elastic. And the pool ball will never hit the other pool ball. It's the elastic part will hit the other elastic part. I'm arguing that the elastic part is the force. So, everything elastic is made elastic because it's compressing forces. It's compressing the amount of space the force is free to move in. And compressing the space means you're creating more energy in the sense of more impacts on the object. You're just making the box smaller. You make the box smaller, the things inside the box hit the outside more often.
If you have energy coming in at a particular angle, that there is enough of these ether particles just randomly scattered about to accept the energy and keep it going, and for it to not disperse in the various...
All right, you're just saying it doesn't, okay? You're not giving me any reason, a dynamic, physical, mechanical reason why it doesn't scatter.
Different directions, all right? So let's go on and see the next point here. All right, let's see, that's that point. Now we do get into this thing about, the whole vortex cannon thing. And it's like, yeah, I would concede that the photon doesn't move that way. No, the only reason why I brought that up is to just motivate the idea that that particulate mediums can have non-dispersive phenomena.
I know, but it's not a wave, okay? So it's only non-dispersive, okay, because the actual thing is not communicating its energy to the other parts. It's just pushing everything out of its way, and it moves, and you're not even talking about the water it pushes away. So in your example, the ether is conveying the energy of the object. The object has to be losing its energy to the ether. The ether takes the energy and sends it someplace else. Okay, the actual object, an atom, doesn't go from here to there. It just moves into the ether. The ether absorbs its energy. The ether sends the signal to the other piece of matter. I'm pretty sure that's what you're saying, that the atom never really goes from point A to point B. It just sends the energy through the ether to point B. Obviously, that's not anything to do with what that cannon thing is doing. Okay, that cannon thing is sending the actual matter from point A to point B. And there is no connection whatsoever to any medium that's transmitting the energy. And what you're definitely not doing is paying any attention to the water that's been pushed out of the way by the cannonball. You're just watching the cannonball move. And you're saying, what is the cannonball doing? And what the water being dispersed is being ignored. So there's tons of dispersion in the water. So when this swirly blob of color goes flying through the water, there's lots of turbulence, lots of water pressure moved all over the place, dispersed in all directions. And you're just saying, well, I'm not looking at the dispersion. You're just saying, I'm not going to pay any attention to it. And we know that the energy does run out, that eventually the cannonball stops and disperses completely, because it is giving its energy away to the ether of the water. It's scattering. So to me, it's a perfect example of why ether doesn't work.
Right? Once again, in order for something to not be magic, you have to be able to demonstrate it in actual experiments. So
okay, well, whatever. You haven't done any of that, so I don't even want to. You want to get into this sort of crappy argument about how do you justify the existence of your elemental objects? Again, you can't even demonstrate, in my opinion, any real evidence of the positron's existence. So why short of magic, you don't have anything.
if someone says that it has to disperse like this, I'll say no, it doesn't have to disperse like that. We have
yeah, it does. Okay, I'm just saying that everything I can find logically says it has to, and you haven't done anything to refute that except say no, it doesn't. So there's no mechanics you've shown me that shows how any kind of random crap that I'm going to bang something into, somehow the random crap doesn't disperse, doesn't scatter. So you're maintaining the same direction, but you don't have to obey any of the rules of geometry which say you can't do that. It's very hard to keep things, I mean, look, arrows have to be precise, you got to be very careful about how you have your tail feathers, and everything has to be rather aerodynamically sound, or your arrow goes crooked.
Examples of phenomenon which apparently do not disperse. So you can't say that is going to happen, or you can't say...
Well, I guess I can. You're just cheating. Okay, sorry. You're just cheating the argument by saying, well, I don't say it works like that. Well, how does it work then? Give me the example. Show me some sort of analogy or some sort of an example where you can create your wave, okay, and it maintains the form of a ray in a medium that has to disperse, that has to scatter.
That me saying that this goes there is, for example, an act of magic, because I have corroborating experiments.
No, you don't. So, okay, I love arguing experiments. So show me some frickin' experiments. I'm dying to see them. People keep telling me kinetic energy exists, that 5-ton trains going 10 miles an hour have twice as much energy as 10-ton trains. They don't have any evidence of any of this crap. So, yeah, I'd love to see the evidence. Show me the experiment that demonstrates any of this crap.
That it does. But once again, it's not a very good piece of evidence, because I don't even think it works that way, okay?
So I don't even know what's the point. So it isn't evidence of your argument. So why bring it up? You say it's not how it works, but you're going to use it as evidence of it. Somehow it is evidence. I don't know what to say to that. Okay, you can't. That's just cheating. To say the piece of evidence you say isn't evidence is evidence. You don't see how that a lawyer really can't get away with that? The evidence of no gun is the evidence for the gun. I mean, obviously there's no gun on the table, because of course he committed the crime with a gun and he disposed of the gun. So the fact that we don't have the gun proves he had the gun, because he must have disposed of the gun, because everybody would dispose of the gun. So of course the evidence of the gun not being on the table is perfect evidence that he had the gun and he shot him. I mean, that's what I should win my legal case with that kind of argument? Oh, come on.
Once again, I would say that the photon moves as a packet, similar to, I once again use a pen.
So what the fuck is the photon made out of? All right, so you have positrons and electrons. What is the photon made out of?
As kind of an analogy, but this might be a grossly wrong analogy, because it just might be that light is generated in, say, single pulses, No, I think
Pulses of what? So again, now you're breaking the rules. Okay, we're trying to say, show me something mechanical. Pulses in the ether. Okay, now it's a pulse in the ether. So, and it's different than some other pulse in the ether, and somehow these different pulses don't affect each other. And I don't know. So where are you going to go with this? So the whole atom moves, or what? Just a piece of the atom moves and moves the ether. So the electron hits the bigger thing, the positron, the neutron, or whatever we're going to call it, the ethertron. Yeah, right. So the electron hits the ethertron. That's much big. It's got to be at least twice as big, right? And somehow it makes the ethertron do this thing. I don't know. You tell me.
easier if you think that light gets generated as a wave packet, as like maybe 4.
Right. Well, a wave packet is their jargon. I mean, that's conventional physics baby talk, in my opinion. So I have no idea what anyone means when they say wave packet. Okay, I got nothing. I can't wave packet. Okay, it's the wave packet. It is just like scissors. No, it's just not like scissors. No, I can't really touch anything on the desk because, it'll all cascade and fall. Wave packet. I don't know. Sorry. Can't even, have no idea. Bagoogly oog. It's just a word that doesn't mean anything to me.
Waves in it, and I've been debating this myself, but ultimately, I think it might just be like representing like one wave inside of something that looks like a toilet paper tube, right? Just short little thing. It's got one blip in it. Is what it is. It's like it's got a rubber membrane in it, and it's stretched to some degree, right?
I don't know. I guess it's your theory. I mean, you got to come. I'm just saying you have to make it out of you're deciding to make a particle model of, like an ocean model of energy transmission. So we know the ocean's made out of water molecules, and we know that the water molecules move in a kind of, they don't really get where they're going. Just the pressure gets where it's going. So you push the water this way, the water goes this way, then the water comes back down and it goes forward a little bit, and then the water goes up. And the water molecules going up are different than the water molecule that went this way, right? So the water molecule that goes this way pushes on the other water molecules, and it sends other water molecules up, right? And then those get pushed back down by gravity, and that energy gets converted into this way again. And so it just keeps converting energy this way into energy up. And so the up and down stuff is basically allowing the continuation of this, okay, because it's conservative, because it's using gravity to store the energy and then bring the energy back down and try to keep going this way. And it only keeps going that way because, in a way, the original energy is still pushing this way. All right, so you're saying your ether's doing that. Well, you don't have gravity, you don't have the storage, so you have to explain how it's keeping it congested, and the pressure, and is continuing to make the wave. Where's all the energy come for that? You can't keep pushing the stuff sideways unless there's some place to restore that energy. Water waves don't work without gravity. Just a fact. Alright, take another pause. Yeah, I'm back. Alright, so another part of this, I guess, is word I'd throw in is the idea of elastic. And the fact that waves are kind of essential on, yes, you can figure out a part going pushing out, but what pushes it all back in again? What changes the direction? And so, you can't have an ether that you're saying is frictionless in this direction, but 100% elastic in this direction. So, I mean, you can't use the external environment to keep your wavicle waving, okay? So it's like the argument. You can't claim a type of gravity that pushes this way, but there's no gravity pushing against your motion. So no matter which way I'm going, somehow it's frictionless, but it's not frictionless in the direction I'm not going. You know, that's sort of cheating. So, you know, instead of using the word magic, I'll use the word cheating. Maybe that'll trigger you, cheater.
So to answer your question is that, yeah, it's an actual back and forth of the ether particles. The ether particle never has to move from location A to location B. The only thing that's moving is the wave action, you know, compression, rarefaction.
Okay, well, whatever. So that's compression and rarefaction is squeezing, you know, and expanding. So it's an elastic function. You got to explain where it comes from, how it works. I'm saying how your particles can do that. Your ethericals, whatever I call it, etrons, your etrons, you know, can be pointed. The dipole can be in this direction. The dipole could be in this direction. How do I compress it when it's this way? How do I compress it when it's that way? I'm just saying it's, you know, I don't see it as elemental or simple. And you'd have to have a lot of awful complex rules, you know, to go with this model. So just this crude outline doesn't provide for all these mechanisms. So in my opinion, you're describing the flying car guy, right? I mean, whatever his name is. That's another video I want to do. Is the the Bob, whatever. What the hell's his name? Bill something. Anyway, in crazy stories, some of these people tell about their free energy stuff, and it's just you know. So that's all you're doing, though. You're just basically telling me that somehow, you know, you can use the cosmic background radiation to levitate a car. How so?
That's the only thing that is moving there. So once again, I kind of regret having to bring up the vortex cannon.
So you said again, I mean, I'm just arguing it has no wave functions in it at all. It's completely void of any wave function. It's really just like shooting a cannon underwater. I mean, there's really no difference than you shooting a cannonball. So you just shot a colored liquid instead of a cannonball. So you made the cannonball out of the same substance as the water, but it's really just telling you the same thing. You're just shooting atoms to a new location. You're not waving anything.
Example, but that is to provide a counterexample for people who say that all physical mechanisms in particulate mediums like this have to be dispersive, because it really...
The water was dispersed. So again, if you would have put the food coloring, or you know, if you had some way of seeing the water molecules and the turbulence in the water, you would see that yes, the water was very dispersive. So everything that you transmitted the energy to, everything that took energy away from the cannonball of water was dispersive, was scattered.
Really isn't. But photons are a very special case, and they do have a special place in the universe.
Magic, so I could just replace special with the word magic. So they're very magical, and they have a magical place in the universe. So I can just play with your words and throw them back at you. So that's all you just said to me, that photons are magic and they have a magical place in the universe.
Living inside the very special...
The very magical...
frame of the ether, which is, like I said...
Whatever, the frame of the ether. So they're in they're magical bits in the magical ether. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm less than convinced. Somewhere less than convinced.
It is a frictionless superfluid, and we don't...
Blah, blah, blah. All of that is just words again. Friction isn't the issue. But you really have to deal with the fact that it has to be energy conservational. So how are you conserving energy? That would be the argument. Motion has to be conserved. You don't believe motion has to be conserved? Then give me your theory of how motion isn't conserved. And show me the experiments where you didn't conserve the amount of motion, mass moving. So show me the experiment where mass moving is not conserved.
Have very good analogies for frictionless superfluids except for helium. And you can see some of the mysterious properties even there. So that's, once again, an experience.
Whatever. Mysterious is another magical word, right? So every time you say mysterious or special, I'll just replace it with the word magic. So magical helium. And there really aren't all, sorry, I don't, show me these magical experiments, because I haven't seen any of the magical experiments, okay? They don't impress the hell out of me. Superconductivity is really interesting, but I can imagine why it works, in the sense of I can imagine that if you supercool something, you get rid of all the noise inside of the matrix of the atoms, and that would have a symptom, that it would create certain, it would prevent certain things from ever happening and would make certain other things easier to happen.
Experimental basis. Now, Gary does bring up the point, what is the point of having all this, crap flying around in here, okay? Now, this gets back to my point of magic. Now, I believe I did explain, we have Gary.
So you still have, in his theory, there's still something called empty space between the ethertrons. No, ethertrons. So he hasn't changed anything. There's still a difference between basically space and matter. Now he's saying it's all just made out of matter and there's no force. So I mean, he's not explaining the force anyway. He's just saying things are charged, and somehow the charge causes attraction and repulsion. But he has no mechanics for the attraction and repulsion. He just says it exists, I suppose. We didn't hear, he didn't tell us that part. He didn't tell us how the electron and the positron stick to each other or associate with each other. And he certainly didn't explain how they associate with other positrons and electrons, and what causes those reactions. Why do opposites attract, and why do likes repel? He doesn't have any of that. I have that with my two interactions.
2 plus 2 plus 2 physics, which I explained is actually correct in some ways. But it's complete magic because we don't know where these...
Yeah, I'm just saying, you could... If you're going to keep using that word, I'm just going to keep having to say something like, fuck you, okay? I mean, it's just too silly. Anyone drawing a model of the universe has to use something in the model that exists, and they're not going to explain why it exists, why it's a fact. Because they won't be able to explain it, because you cannot explain something in being existing. It's just, there's no way to explain it. There's no way to explain whatever the something is, whether it's a positron, an electron, a proton. It doesn't matter what I call it, whatever ton I make, I have to invoke some sort of, well, that's what the universe is fucking made out of. I didn't choose blueberry pie, but the universe chose to make everything out of blueberry pie. You have to accept that, and it works. If I can make a model where blueberry pies answer all the questions and explain all the phenomena, then yeah, blueberry pie is what it's made out of then. I mean, that's all the model has to do. You're complaining that I didn't explain why electrons exist. Well, fuck you. I don't have to do that. That's ludicrous. Shit. And 2 properties is not like I gave it 17. I didn't give it antennas and eyeballs and special ESP powers and any of that crap. I gave it these simple little properties. 2 of them. I mean, come on. It's just too ridiculous to go, I'm invoking magic. Shit. I can't believe I have to do this a 3rd time. I just can't believe I have to do this a 3rd time. If I just threw, like I said, if I just convert every word you say and I just throw magic in on the 5th word, you're not going to like it. You're not going to enjoy it.
Come from, right? So we can make, the reason why we need to put all this crap everywhere is so that this...
So the magic will happen. That's the magical part.
Has become magic, right? So it's like, what are the two kinds of matter? The two kinds of matter are positrons and electrons.
Charge, yes, charge, 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 charge. All you need is something to account for attraction and repulsion. And so how do the charges act opposite? Well, because they're interacting in a universe full of stuff that's opposite to them. So one of them only sees square things and one of them only sees triangle things. And as long as you make the two things see the opposite thing, then yes, it all works. You can have attraction and repulsion. And it works just fine. And it's really simple.
You see, that's not magic. We know scientifically that those two exist. So I'm not making up any particles.
I'm not making up any either, fucker. And then you are making up positrons. I'm sorry. They're made up. Okay? They're just somebody saw the same thing and said, well, it looks just like a proton, but let's all call it a positron. So I'm just going to call bullshit on that. That's not just made up. Of course it's made up.
You know that the neutron exists. So we're not making up anything, really.
You are. Yeah, you are. So show me. Show me the positron.
I mean, even if you don't believe that, you do have to believe that they're neutrons, right? So we are not making up any stuff, okay? And then we have...
so again, I didn't make up any stuff either. There's stuff obviously moving the speed of light. You don't think it's stuff. You think it's your fucking ether. So your fucking ether, somehow made out of fucking matter, is somehow going the speed of fucking light. So that makes sense to you. The matter can't go the speed of light, but somehow the ether can go the speed of light. I mean, this stuff has to move. You're saying you're banging particles of ether against particles of ether. Well, somehow they have to move the speed of light for that signal to move the speed of light. You can't move the signal that fast unless the objects are moving that fast, unless the objects aren't even barely moving. And the speed of light is somehow, the speed of the wave is much faster than the speed of light, but it's reduced to the speed of light by how slow the matter moves, the ether bits move. But then things would be variable, because then you'd have a variable speed based on how many ether bits you hit.
To have two kinds of interaction and two kinds of forces. Now the thing is that in order to generate forces, you actually have to have particles actually crash into each other.
No, yeah, that's right. The force bits. That's why you said the word force bit. He believes in force bits. The force bits are different than matter bits. That's why one's called a force bit, one's called a matter bit. The force bits move, the matter bits don't. The force bits are pushers, rowers. The boats are not pushers or rowers. The boat is a boat. The boat doesn't go anywhere until it has a rower in it.
So we've got this positron electron. If it goes and more of these things hit this atom on this side, it's going to push it this way, right? So that's a force.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yes, exactly. The rowers are in the water. You can pop them into your boat. And then you have rowers in your boat. And then you can throw them back in the water and they go really, really fast. You know, and then you put them in your boat and they go really, really slow. So, that's the way it works. That's right. The force has to use its energy to push the matter. When the rowers don't have to push a boat, they go really fast. When they're in a boat, pushing a boat, they're going really slow.
That's just plain Newtonian physics, right? Not magic. We know how Newtonian physics work. We know how things happen when they collide into each other.
So again, I don't even know what the fuck are you doing? That's not magic. Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. And again, if you're just going to keep using the word, I'm just going to keep protesting and saying, fuck this. There's no point in having a conversation, because I think everything you're talking about, you've just invented. You're just making up the existence of these things and making up properties that they have that doesn't make any sense. You're saying that the motion keeps going in this direction because somehow the motion just keeps going that way, even though it's hitting things at angles. So pool balls don't work that way. So you can't use pool balls as an example. You're saying I hit one pool ball and I hit the other one at an angle and somehow it still goes the same way. And it goes to the right velocity somehow magically. Even though I didn't hit it fully on contact, I didn't hit its center of mass, somehow it just goes as if I did hit its center of mass. Now, frankly, that's a magical property. I wouldn't give a shit, frankly, if it works. If your model can do that and it works, I say fine. I'm not calling foul. And here you are pretending that you made some counter argument to why my theory doesn't work and your theory does work. No, you didn't make that argument. I'm sorry. You didn't explain how any property, the 2 plus 2 plus 2, that any one of those things fails to work in the real world. That it fails to explain the experiments exist in the real world. Because it didn't fail. It does explain why the speed of light is the speed of force. And it does explain why matter doesn't move the speed of light. It does explain almost, I'd say it does explain any fact you can tell. You give me a fact and I'll explain the fact.
So the trick is to make it so that we have waves of these things, and then we have waves of these things crashing into the particle.
We have special magical waves. And that's all they are. Okay, so you still haven't explained what's containing the wave, what's raying the wave. None of it. You haven't explained how it possibly gets transmitted from point A to point B without being dispersed. None of it. Again, the cannonball example proves dispersion. It doesn't disprove it. It proves it, the water cannon. Because all you have to do is look at what happens to the water. The water, the ether, in that example, is being dispersed.
And these waves are bigger on this side than on this side, that we get movement, right? So this is how we get the two different forces that Gary talks about, right? So if
there's one force, the fact is it just matters on who it's pushing. So it's just, again, there's no pull, there's only push. And all you have is something that can see the push and something that can't see the push. If the push isn't there, the opposite push, then the push wins, right? So if I'm missing a push, then the other push wins.
But actually it's really only one, and it's just a pushing force. As Gary and we both agree, there's only a pushing force, right? So
we agree, and you're just going to ruin any capacity to have a conversation based on the points that we agree on, because you're going to say waves aren't magical, but particles are. Bullshit.
We shoot particles to move them, right? If you ever see two particles moving together, it's because there's another particle over here that's being shoved this way, right? There's nothing in Newtonian physics that creates an actual attraction, right? But there you will get different forces which will be coming at different angles.
Right, I know, but your wave does require an elastic component that you haven't explained the existence of it. Again, you're saying you're pushing things sideways to wave this way. All right? Well, what happens to all the energy that went sideways? Where's the gravity, all right, that your wave is using to push it back into a ray?
I guess it'd be two-way. And then we have the two interactions. Now, in my case, those two interactions happen because of what electrons do. What electrons do compared to?
Because they have magical properties. Okay, so he's going to tell me what electrons do. Now, there are just two things they can do. They can reflect, or they can absorb and change the color of a force. So just two properties. So what kind of magical properties are you going to give your electrons? What electrons can do? Yeah, I want to hear what electrons can do. Explain to me what they can do and how they can do it. All right, and then I'll call it magic, because your explanation will have to be magic. There's no way you're going to tell me what electrons do with you producing a single shred of evidence for how they can do it.
Similar compared to what positrons do, okay? These both emit waves, right?
All right, whatever that means. Okay, what do you mean they emit waves? No, it's not okay. Sorry. That's not okay. The medium that's carrying your waves is made out of an electron and a positron. How can the electron have a property that is dependent on it, moving something else that's bigger than it, that's made of it? I can't. It's like me digesting, it's like an elephant eating me and I digest the elephant. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Obviously, it doesn't make any sense because elephants are vegetarians.
And they do it like the analogy is like ringing like a bell. You hit the electron, it rings at a resonant.
Oh, whatever that means. And you hit it with what? I hit it with an ethertron, okay, and now the electron rings in what? The ether? So now it rings the ether. So the ether hits the electron, and that makes the ether ring. So I have one little ether bit hits the electron, and now all the ether is ringing. Right? So where's the Newtonian conservation of energy here? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense.
Frequency, okay?
No.
So
Okay.
we get that frequency. Then we have the resonant frequency coming out of the positrons. And those are actually always...
Well, wait, so whatever. The resonant frequency. So again, what does that even mean? Resonant has to be connected to an oscillator, a box, something that forces something to stop, go back, stop, go back. You can't have resonance unless you have two forms of motion. So what's the box that the positron is in? Why is it resonating at a frequency? Why is it oscillating at a specific frequency? How is it doing that?
At the opposite phase, okay? Now what happens is that...
No, none of it's okay. I'm sorry. None of it. All right, so you've created two ethers now. You have this ringing happening in one ether, and then that ringing is somehow causing motion in the big ether or something. I don't even know how to make sense out of that.
When the particles come together from opposite phases, those cancel, right?
There's no particles. Again, you're vibrating the ether with a resonant frequency off a particle that's inside of the ether's made out of. Sorry, no sale. I don't even know how to, it's like me taking a mirror outside and reflecting the sun, and the energy coming off the mirror is brighter than the sunlight.
One wave coming in this way, and then you have the other wave coming in the opposite way. The result is like noise canceling headphones. You get them canceled.
All right, whatever. So all of this stupid cancellation crap, all of this constructive, destructive interference crap is all based on the two-slit experiment, which I have completely debunked. There's no wave cancellation. You either have a frequency in phase or you have a frequency out of phase. It has nothing to do with waves adding and waves subtracting. It has to do with receiving a signal coherently, just like a radio. Okay, there's no absence of energy hitting the antenna. Okay, if I send two radio signals and they cancel because they're out of phase, it's because my receiver says I can't do that. The energy doesn't not hit the antenna. Okay, it's not that the electricity didn't happen. It's that the form of the signal is indecipherable, but it's still being hit. The Morse code is lost. If I send two Morse code signals to somebody, you could understand that the dots and the dashes, if they overlap, I won't be able to tell two dots from one dash, and I won't be able to tell anything. I'll lose all the information. That's not too hard to figure out. You don't call that anything but, yes, a form of interference, but it's not consuming anything.
And so what happens is that between the electron and the proton, those waves get canceled. So there are actually fewer collisions between these guys. Now, at all times, we have the collisions happening on the outside. So these become stronger. So all the particles hitting the positron on this side and all the particles hitting the electron on this side, they become stronger. And then,
okay, there's no point in talking about the particles. Okay, you're saying the ether, and that somehow the ether cancels when it's out of phase. Why would being in phase or out of phase cancel the ether? And so this goes back to another Newtonian argument, okay, about superposition, in terms of it's a really old argument that there is no evidence that gravity as a force combines in space. It doesn't. One object cannot sense the force of something else's gravity. The gravity has to get all the way to the material object. And until it gets to the material object, nothing happens. Okay, there's no force detection. Nothing has a force detector. Okay, so none of that could possibly make any sense in the sense that that's already not a rule. Forces don't interact with forces. You can't make two photons hit each other. So again, it just defeats your whole argument. This phase argument can't have anything to do with it, or you'd be again, you're unable to explain why I can't make photons hit photons.
That is what pushes the electron and the proton together, you know, without using, say, magic, right? So
well, I'm saying it is all magic. The existence of your ether is magic. The existence of all these particles is magic. So again, it's just the same accusation. I mean, this is just such a, again, if you want to do this, I'm telling you it's a non-starter for me. All right? If you're going to insult me, okay, by saying I'm resorting to magic because I have two forms of matter in the universe and two forms of force in the universe, and that's all, fuck you. It's too ridiculous. I mean, it's just a ridiculous argument. I'm not allowed to say that that's the elemental universe. Those are the rules. It's about as simple a Flintstone drawing of a car that you could possibly get. I can't make it out of more sticks on stones. It's made out of something so fucking simple. Ugh, crap.
About the importance of magic. That we're only using Newtonian physics. Now, I admit there is still some magic in here. In that,
yeah, well, I'm sorry. There's lots of unexplained phenomenon in your theory. Okay, a lot of just, well, it does, it happens. It's the way it works. That's the property it has. You know, and you're just, again, you're in a glass house pointing your stupid finger, and it's just totally unproductive, in my opinion. All right, if that's going to be your tone and your attitude, that you're going to call anything that disagrees with you magic, fuck you. Again, there's no, what conversation is there to have? Fuck you. It's too stupid. I'm not doing that.
You do have to believe something, like these electrons, every single positron, every single electron in the universe have to be ringing at exactly the same frequency, exactly the same time.
Yeah, whatever. This ringing in what? How is it ringing? What the fuck mechanism is making it ring? I mean, it's just, sorry. And you'll sit there and accuse somebody else of having magical properties. Oh, it bounces off. Well, that's a magical property compared to fucking ringing?
And that the smallest possible wave in the universe are the waves which are coming out here, so that you can never have a partial either in phase or out of phase, right? So some people say, oh, well, you know, it could be off by a quarter wave, then what's that? So I'm saying that's impossible. Because,
well, no, it's impossible for you to make sense out of that, because then all distances would have to be precisely in Planck distances. So now you have to have everything jump from a Planck distance, all right? Because part of what's going to cause in phase and out of phase is obviously distance. If I change the distance, I change whether they're in phase or out of phase. And if I change the distance by an incremental amount, I'm going to have things going in phase and things going out of phase. So you can't make the argument there's waves and then say that the medium isn't. What are you going to do? How are you going to change the fact that the peaks of the waves are in specific locations? And if I change the distance between the shoreline and the wave, I'm going to end up having the peak is going to end up being incrementally diverse. It's not going to be either completely in phase or completely out of phase. It's going to be partially. But who see, in my theory, it doesn't matter, because frankly, partials are perfectly legal. Because it's not wave destruction. It's not fucking, you don't have the two choices of add or subtract. You have the better choice of just saying you're either going to add energy to a system or not add energy to the system, and that's it.
That is a bit of magic, but my corroborating experiment is like an analogy to what we have happening in digital computers, right?
All right, well, that's not going to be a useful analogy, frankly. Not even close.
In digital computers, the signal can either be a 1 or 0. It can't be anything else other than a 1, full 1, or full 0. And this,
Okay, so there's just absolutely no way that you've described your wave in any mechanics that force it to always be either 100% in phase or 100% out of phase. So good luck with that. But that's frankly just bullshit. I mean, there's no other. What the fuck? How the hell is that possible? Unless again, you're going to just make a true checkerboard and say that you can only put a checker on a square and it can never be moving from one square to another. It can never be a half on one square and half on another square. So go ahead and say that is one of your premises, and then I'll say magic property.
state can only change at the same time everywhere in the CPU at the fixed clock rate. So that's exactly a system that exactly follows what I am proposing to you, right?
No, it doesn't. So whatever. So that proves your universe is a checkerboard. I don't think so. But whatever. This it just doesn't go anywhere. It's just unfortunate that all this conversation ends up just being in some respects a waste of time, because the whole thing has to be judged based on how many questions it answers and how well it answers the questions, right? So if it's not seen in overview, it's not going to be appreciated as an answer. Yeah. So I mean, the thing you're measuring about, here's a model. What makes the model good? Well, Occam's razor, the simplicity, that makes it good. So if it's really easy to do and really mechanically simple, very few moving parts, that's all good. And then how many questions does it answer? How many of experiments does it answer? Why does the experiment come out this way? Does the model answer the question? So I'm just saying those are the two things you have to do. And then you have to do it with as much specific detail. Because there's lots of side effects to everything you propose to exist. You have to explain all the side effects, all the concept, the unintended, the unuseful. What would it also mean? So the fact is that Lesage gravity was dismissed in the past because there was no explanation for how it overcomes the drag subject. Now I think I have explained how you can overcome drag and why it would appear that electrons and protons don't overcome drag, that they actually do in fact do exactly what Lesage gravity would argue. They do lose their energy. They can't go forever. You can't shoot one to the moon. It won't get there because it will be dragged to a halt. And that things more complicated, like a helium nucleus, I can throw that to the moon and it'll get there. Well, anyway. But yeah, that's the subject. And, frankly, I'm just saying, I think my drawings are better than your drawings. And my mechanics are simpler.
So it's not a magical thing if computers are already doing it, right? But it is something you would have to expect.
And computers are doing it at a very high complexity cost. Computers are insanely complex to keep track of all that binary functionality. So you can't have it both ways. And it's not really a fair analogy because, again, a computer isn't working in some other universe than the one we exist in. It's not working in your model.
As a motivating factor, why is it we need all this crap? It's to provide the actual non-magical Newtonian fully mechanical.
Okay, whatever. Again, he keeps claiming that my theory is somehow un-Newtonian, which is just absolutely nonsense. I mean, it's just so fucking stupid, in my opinion, for him to make this accusation when I'm completely defending mass and velocity as the only functional elements, and I'm explaining why gravity exists, not just explaining how it exists, about what it does. I'm explaining a lot more than what it does. I'm explaining how it does it.
Explanation for how the two kinds of particles, positrons and electrons, and the two kinds of interactions, which is going to be either an addition or a full cancellation. Those are the two interactions that.
Yeah, well, whatever. It says you, and I say you can do it with fewer notes. You can do it simpler. You don't need to wave a medium to do exactly the same thing.
We get that allow these forces to arise.
Yeah, well, you can't cancel a force in any sense of destroy. So that doesn't work. You can't just make it go away. You can't make it, you know, wave cancellation is real destruction. It's just a fact. The energy is used in the fact that you have two forces that disperse all the energy. All the energy is dispersed. All right. And so it doesn't exist in either one of the directions. So it's like the trains hitting each other. The reason why, okay, there's no motion in any direction is because all the energy has been dispersed. But the energy hasn't been destroyed. It's just been converted into subatomic and subcompound energy. You've separated the atoms and dispersed the energy.
Okay, I think that's...
So if in your theory all of these resonant particles are dispersing the ether and spreading the ether and causing the ether to break into pieces, well, that would all have a consequence, wouldn't it? It should be detectable.
But let's go check the rest of the video and make sure we didn't miss anything. I don't think we did, so... And I think that was the important factors that we wanted to consider. Okay.
So it's all fine. You can make all the counter arguments you want. I don't think you've really addressed any of the specifics, which are of the 2 + 2 + 2 theory, in the sense of dealt with them in any way, explained how it's not possible, how there's an experiment that proves they can't work, or any of that. And that's fine. All of it's fine, except if you're going to use words like magic, you know, that somehow my theory has more magical functions in it, I'm just going to call bullshit, and the end. I'm not going to accept it, okay, as a reasonable counter argument, because I'll just say the same thing about your theory, and then we'll just discount the two as magic and walk away, right? We'll just insult each other's theory and call it that's the end of it. No point in discussing any further, okay, because you're claiming I somehow have broken the stay in reality rules, and somehow you didn't violate them. And it's just a lie that you didn't. It's just a lie to say your theory doesn't rely on just as much or more magic. I'd certainly claim it's even more magic. But whatever. Is my counter-accusation productive? Your theory has twice as much magic as mine. Well, yours has twice times infinity. Well, yours has twice times double infinity. Is this productive? No.
So that will do it for this video. Once again, you know, I'm looking forward to a response on this. I'm still waiting for a response on my magic video. I know he probably... I'm sure he had.
Yeah, I made a response. I mean, I'm just saying, you know, the fact that you can't, you know, you can't pay enough attention to realize I have a .com. It's right here in the video. DraftPhysics.fucking.com. 90% of my fucking videos are on that website. I don't like YouTube. I don't like capitalist cunts. Okay, and I try not to fiddle with them where I can avoid getting their skank on me. I try to do that because they're fucking goddamn censoring bastards. All right, so I have a reason why I don't play on your fucking platform. And I only use it out of necessity. And if you haven't figured that out yet, you know, I'm sorry. I mean, you make very little physics content on your YouTube channel, right? Compared to your website, yeah. I mean, you do waste, you know, your website does have, you know, trailer park crap in it and all the other stuff. But whatever, I'm just saying, you know, it's mostly just the physics. Well, I do the same thing, shithead. So, The response is on the website. Fuck. It's just some things are just so stupid, and you're just like, well, fuck, come on.
Some kind of snappy response to this, but this is kind of a continuation that I'm showing that, you know, we need the ether to get rid of the magic. Okay.
Oh, fuck you. Just fuck you. The ether is just layered in layers and layers and layers of properties that can't be accounted for existing without causing all kinds of other crap to happen. Again, you can't even explain why your positron electron crapola doesn't all just gravitationally stick to each other. Where's your dark energy forcing the bits of your magnetic sea not to just stick together like little pieces of magnet? You know, fuck. Anyway, just so.
We need to, you know, stop pulling rabbits out of hats. You know.
Yeah, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
Red force bits don't turn into green force bits.
Yeah, okay, fuck you. Okay, I already did the video. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Okay, if that's going to be your fucking attitude, fuck you, because every fucking thing on your fucking drawing board, first, it doesn't have any fucking properties. You don't show any fucking goddamn details. Okay, and all of it's just fucking magic.
It's just that we have waves and they are interacting.
Oh, we have magical waves made out of the stuff that's waving. Of course, the waves are made out of the wavicles, are made out of the wave R's, and the big waves make the little waves, and it's all quite circular. The thing waving is also the waver. Fuck you.
And that is why they get physically pushed around, like billiard balls, right? And that's what I mean by...
Now, it's nothing like billiard balls. That's the whole fucking point. You haven't explained that at all, because billiard balls and a crowded random sea of billiard balls doesn't allow you to shoot a billiard ball in a straight line.
It's fully mechanical...
Unless you have magic.
Explanation. Now, theoretically, if I worked on this hard enough, yeah, I could get this to work on a billiard table, all right?
No, you can't. So go ahead. Promises, promises.
Difficult. Right, well, but that's it, and thank you for your time.
All right. So anyways, yeah, the last bit was really just horrible. You know. So, I mean, he avoided using magic till he got like whatever 3/4 into that video. So, but yeah, it just ruins it. There's just no way I'm going to accept that accusation that having 6 fundamental functions in the universe, the existence of electrons and protons, charge, the 2 forces that are inverse to create the charge effects, the properties of the electron and proton are the fact that they interpret the 2 elements of the field differently, and 2 interactions as too many elements, too complicated, too magical. Fuck you. And it will do a better job of explaining anything on this planet. And again, wave theory is dead with the 2-slit experiment. It's quite obvious that the 2-slit experiment has nothing to do with waves if you analyze it rationally, as particles being scattered, and the particles arrive at the surface at a frequency. You have absolutely no need for any medium or any waves. Anyway, and frankly, that truth is already made obvious by radar experiments and radio wave experiments, where obviously the reason why you can't receive the signal is because the signal is being jammed. The physics for jamming is identical to wave interference, and it doesn't require anything called interference. It just requires confusing the receiver. All right. So enough said. Until the next time, and such, and so forth and whatnot. Oh, yeah. Well, Google is evil, but that's really not the point of this channel. So this has been a draftphysics.com and debatesphysics.com also. But again, I think, well, the debate's obviously going to have to be narrowed to specific subjects. Debating entire theories probably isn't going to work. So there has to be like debates about the existence of a positron and what's the evidence for that. A debate about can wave interference be described with a particle theory? Yes, it can. Those kind of arguments. Anyway, is the kinetic energy theory 1/2 mv squared supported by any good logic and reasoning? Yeah, not argue. No, it isn't. So anyway, till the next time. And are there experiments that demonstrate to be a fable, that decisively prove it can't be the truth? And the fact is, there are such experiments.